Memory is not consciousness. Consciousness exists, pierces through the mind. Memory is our reflections, and even our imagination is not consciousness. Consciousness is experience. So much of spiritual experience is determined by one's state of consciousness. When one goes through a spiritual experience, what one is remembering is a time when our consciousness was raised. Our consciousness was either bigger than it was or at a higher state. If your consciousness kind of reaches out beyond the edges of your body and into further and further layers outside of yourself, whether it be this grove or this graveyard, or if you're really good, this whole town, where the edges of your body aren't really what confine you anymore and you are more. Or you're tapping into consciousness that's beyond time and space, higher levels. So time won't feel the same, you won't know how much time passed, yet so much makes sense. Understanding in that state doesn't always last. Most of the time it doesn't, unless you can retain it. And that requires skill. But in those moments, you start to understand things that you didn't previously. Everything that locked your mind into a box no longer applies in those moments. And, because we're beyond space and time, we don't know how long these moments last. They could last a really short time or a really long time. We look at the evidence around us once we come out of such a state. It is often what accompanies it is ecstasy or intense. You could call it a pleasure, but it's not a physical body pleasure. It's more like we didn't realize we were in pain when our mind was confined, but then we realize in those states, and when we remember that, we understand how confined we are usually. Memory is confining. Imagination is confining. And experience and consciousness coming into a line in various intensities and magnitudes helps us realize what we really are behind the mind, behind memory, behind imagination. Everything that you're trying to connect to in your spiritual journey or your spiritual understanding or your spiritual on your path, whatever you're trying to connect to, whatever you're trying to experience, it is not so that you can remember as this person. It is not so that you can remember, so that you can become someone else. It is to become bigger than a single lifetime, a single space, and a single moment, and a single individual. It's to become bigger than that, more than that, and to feel who you really are behind everything. And that's why when we get into reincarnation and multiple lives, it's so hard for individual soul to put down that mind, to put down that understanding, to put down that specific context. That's why it's good to practice putting that down, basically putting the bag down that you're carrying all these things, all these ways that you identify yourself, whether it be how you look, what you believe, what you align with. You're carrying all these things in a bag. All your traumas, all your happy memories, that's in the bag too. A spiritual experience and aligning with various states of consciousness is putting that bag down and letting go of all those things that you think make you when they actually don't. It's incredibly hard for a soul to put all these things down, as I said. That's why there's two kinds of people that don't need to be burned. Babies, babies that died soon after birth, they're not identified with the body. They're not yet identified with that individual that they were. Or very detached and enlightened people. They were aligned with something bigger, their soul, not that individual life they were living. The reason that body should be burned is because that little tiny orb that we are, that when all our energy is gathered up and we're a little orb and we're kind of leaving the body, we kind of want to go back, because once you're that little tiny orb-like thing, You no longer look like you used to look. You no longer have a housing of material. It can be very discombobulating. It can be very troubling. So that little orb-like being tries to go back in. Vast majority of the time can't, but it's kind of a bad existence to keep on trying to go back in, because you're so identified with that ego, so identified with that body, so identified with that person. But if there's no body there, then it's easier for, you could say, the sheath around the soul, that is the astral body, to be like, okay, there's nowhere to go, and then naturally attracted to the light, like a moth to some kind of lantern or a street light, something like that. Everything scales, as above, so below. But the moth is a really great analogy for the kinds of beings we are in that in-between state, and the kind of beings that exist in that in-between state just all the time. Ones that kind of live there between dimensions in that in-between state. But anyway, spiritual experience is, to really have one, to really experience one, you have to detach. It's very useful to get used to how your body breathes, how it moves, and how your pulse operates, and really narrow everything down in meditation and feel what you are behind everything. Because if you look at those little tiny functions in your body and you not necessarily alter them, but track them and then slowly make them calmer, you'll start to feel a hand behind it all. You'll start to feel your soul. You'll start to feel something that wants to look around to see where it is, but it is the looking. So whatever direction it looks at, and when you meditate enough, you'll get to a point where you'll want to direct your consciousness to look at yourself, but you are the looking. There's nothing to look at. Even if there was a mirror, there would be nothing there. Most people who meditate enough get to that point where they consciously try to look at themselves with just their consciousness, and without their eyes, without their senses, and they can't look at themselves, because it is the looking, it is consciousness. And that in and of itself is a spiritual experience, when you can layer yourself down to just consciousness, and then it's a little discombobulating in that void of not necessarily darkness, but just no thingness. But yes, so spiritual experiences are basically not identifying with the body, not identifying with this shell, but feeling who you are behind everything. And memory can be deceiving, and memory is limited, and memory is not us. Our accumulation of memories is not us. Everything is ultimately recorded and lasts. Everything has an effect, but our memories aren't us, despite what we think makes us up. We think that we would be gone if we deleted all our memories, but that's not true. We would have the same essence. When I was a baby, I remember my eyesight wasn't fully developed yet. I think it was kind of like a black and white, but it was like a red where the black was. Anyway, it wasn't fully developed yet. But I remember reaching left and right and just having the urge to reach. I didn't think in words because I didn't know any words, but I just had the urge to reach, right, left, right. And I was only aware of my upper body and my respiratory system. I wasn't aware of my lower body. And I was just kind of like, right here. And I wasn't fully aware of, like, you know, how the face and the nose work. But my awareness was just kind of right here, and I had the urge to reach, and I was very small, but I didn't think in words. Yet, the consciousness that I felt was me. That was me. That's the same consciousness that I have now. It still feels the same. The consciousness behind all the memories, behind all the identification, behind all the body awareness. That consciousness that I felt, it's the same one now. That consciousness has not changed. It has gained a bit of clarity, I imagine, at times, but that consciousness feels the same. And it's the same consciousness that has been in multiple bodies before this one. Many bodies. And, you know, plant life, animals. That consciousness has always felt the same, because that is not changing. It is the mechanism through which the soul records everything, and all the memories are grouped together. But in the vast ocean of memories that the soul's gathering, we're barely a drop. That's why everything that we do matters. Everything matters. But everything is all these things are impermanent. Everything matters, but individual context is limited and impermanent. Anything that is limited is impermanent. And that is why we must not identify with the body and feel what we truly are. At any rate, this has been a little bit of a rant video about spiritual experience and consciousness. I hope you enjoyed it. Like this video, it really helps out the channel. Leave a comment, that also helps out the channel, even if you just say hi. And feel free to share this wherever you like. At any rate, thank you very much for watching, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day.